Extraordinary Ramadan with me, Shaheen Satter, on Ramadan Radio 87.9 FM, online at ramadanradio.org and streaming on Facebook. Please call, text, or WhatsApp with your feedback, your questions, with your comments on 077 614 60614. That's 077 614 60614. Thank you for tuning into what is, I think, the third episode of Extraordinary Ramadan. For those who are tuning in for the first time, I talk to ordinary people doing extraordinary things in what I think is truly an extraordinary time. Join me as I speak to people taking up crazy challenges and completing huge goals in this less than ordinary month. Jazakallah khair for joining, and thank you for listening in this morning. I hope all of your weeks have been, your week singular actually, has been good. I know that my week has been sort of stuffed with being at work, but then I've also managed to have some good iftars, managed to make it home back in time for iftar. And I've been listening to small snippets of Cambridge Muslim College's podcast series throughout the day, which has a really, really beautiful running theme of, you know, being in nature and sort of engaging your spirituality through that. Anyway, I shan't sort of, you know, dabble on about my week. I'm sure you guys are excited to hear about my first guest today. So my first guest today is Afruz Mian, a British Bengali former teacher, Afruz Mian, who is in the process of running 313k from London to Oldham to raise money for the Global Relief Trust. Now, of course, it wouldn't be extraordinary if he was running just 313k. There has to be an added bonus on top of that, in that he's doing this challenge whilst not eating or drinking between sunrise or sunset, not even drinking water. And I should mention that is fasting in itself. So he's going to be running through Milton Keynes today, and I've managed to catch him on his way to Milton Keynes. Assalamu alaikum, Afruz. And it's not a coincidence that we've caught you on the show today. Tell us the significance of 313 and the fasting today and the running today.
Assalamu alaikum. Walaikum salam, Shaheen. Jazakallah khair for having me. First and foremost, as all praise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who gives us the ability to do certain things. Today, as we know, is 17th Ramadan, and that marks the history, Islamic history, when 313 Sahabas battled with the Quraysh, 1,000 Quraysh, and they won the battle at that time. And my challenge this year is 313 kilometers to run from Oldham to London, and that was in honor of the Sahabas, alhamdulillah. And it's a coincidence that today, you know, we're doing this program, and exactly today is the 17th of Ramadan, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, it's a wonderful coincidence that we managed to catch you today. I think Afruz and I were sort of just speaking about this before the show aired, and I just thought, well, this is an amazing coincidence. So tell us about your background, Afruz. I know that you initially weren't into running, but you managed to get into it. What sort of spurred you on?
Well, initially I had to, because my health wasn't very good. I had high blood pressure. I was diagnosed with hypertension, which was very critical. I had an appointment with my doctor, and they were very close to prescribing me with these tablets for life. But I thought, you know what, I buy time from the doctor. I said, you know what, could you give me a couple of months to see if I can, you know, get my diet, my fitness, my body and weight, everything in order, and maybe I don't have to take these tablets. Because, you know, once you get into medication, and, you know, you get prone to be on it for a year, and I didn't want to be dependent on that. So I took the streets of Oldham and I started running. There was a girls' school called Westwood High. One of my younger brother who does a lot of things for the school, I got in touch with him, and I said, is there any way I can use this running and raise some funds for the school who was suffering because of COVID, and the parents were struggling to pay the fees. So I said, what can I do a campaign, so A, it keeps me going, and B, I can raise some funds. So the initial target was to raise £500 and to run 50 kilometers. That eventually became £12,000, and I ran 200 kilometers. So that's what it started off with.
So this was outside of Ramadan, or was this in Ramadan?
No, that was last Ramadan. Ramadan.
So you ran a total of
200 kilometers, and we raised £12,000 last Ramadan.
My goodness, that's phenomenal. I don't know how anyone running 200 kilometers in Ramadan. I don't know how you do that, from going to a non-runner to, you know, having a health scare like that, and then, you know, being a runner. That's
Alhamdulillah. I think the support of the community and the purpose and the cause we're doing it for, I think that helped.
And what is the cause?
The cause was for Westwood High Girls School last time.
Oh, what is the cause today?
This time the cause is we, through Global Relief Trust, who are based in 8 countries, we are gonna work in 8 countries, and we're gonna distribute aid, Ramadan aid, pre-Ramadan, post-Ramadan, medical aid, self-sustaining projects in places like Burundi, Lebanon, Yemen, Gaza, Bangladesh, Rohingya. Team GRT are actually going on Friday again to the borderline of Lebanon and Syria to distribute what we raise through this campaign and other campaigns.
That's amazing. I mean, I know that a lot of your running has to do with fundraising, and a lot of it has to do with campaigning for the communities and, you know, projects that you care about. And I do know also that a lot of it has to do with your personal health. And I'm reading here that, you know, you were around 16 stones and you're 11 stones now. What is that like? How do you sort of, you know, not only go through a spiritual change when you're running, and, you know, because you can only concentrate on the road in itself and, you know, where you're running to, but what does that physical change feel like in Ramadan?
Alhamdulillah, you know what, like I said, you know, it's not happened by accident. Obviously, you know, we've been, I run about 3 or 4 running sessions through the week in Oldham, and all my runners are running. Initially, they start off with doing a couple of kilometers, and gradually we build on that. Now, every time we go out now, we run an average of 10 kilometers, and most of them will start having water bottles and carrying water bottles with them, and eventually over 2-3 months, we try and push that one out, and our body gets used to running without water. And obviously, at the end, we recoup that water, and you know, we top up on the water that we've lost. But you know, it's about training the body and the mind in a way that you get used to. So we've been doing that for the past year. So now when I'm going out, alhamdulillah, you know what, it's hard, but because we've adapted our body to the system without consuming any sort of fluid, it's not as hard as it should be, if you want to put it bluntly.
Well, I mean, that's one of the phenomenal things about running and about doing any sport, really. I mean, I remember one of the real tough summers that we had a few years back, sort of, you know, fasting when it was, I think it was literally a 35-degree day, and thinking, I can't make it. And just knowing, and just at the end of the rosa, at the end of the fast, just knowing, you know, your body can actually do anything. You'd be surprised and shocked how much, you know, your body can withstand, and how much we actually just mollycoddle it throughout the rest of the year. I think we've got in terms of video there. But I wanted to ask anyway, tell us logistically, I mean, you're running 313k from London to Oldham. What does that look like in terms of, so you run, how many miles do you run every day? And
so on average so far, today's going to be my 14th run. I've already done 200 kilometers in 13 days. I've built in a couple of rest days, obviously for recovery and for health reasons. But what it is, initially what I did, I started off from Oldham. So I'm doing it over 22 days. So the first few days, first 5 days, I had a support vehicle with me anyway. I've got that with me throughout the run anyway. But the first 5 days, what I did, I ran 15 kilometers to a certain point. Then the driver brought me back home. Next day, we went back to that destination, and then did another 15 kilometers, and then back home, and back and forth. And once we got to near Derby, it became a struggle, because the running wasn't the hardest bit. The hardest part was getting to my destination. And due to COVID, masjids are closed. People are not staying over in the masjid overnight. So that's become a bit of an issue. But alhamdulillah, we've had the community people coming forward from different towns, offering me places to stay. We've been booking hotels, when there's not been any, accommodation available. Alhamdulillah. So these are the logistics that we've had to put in place. And even though it looks, it would have been easy to do a virtual one in Oldham and do 313. But I thought, you know what, it's not just about virtual. We want to engage, and we want to tell people about the 313. and actually do like a road show and go through and meet the people, meet the donors, meet the community, and share that kind of love about Ramadan and spread the goodness about 313.
Wow, that's a truly immersive experience of running. I mean, I know that when I was speaking to one of our first episodes was with Harun Mota of Penny Appeal, who's running, I think something 200 something.
He did 260. I didn't know about that, and I did 200 that last year. So.
Oh, I see. I see. Well, I mean, he's running over the space of Ramadan. I always said, yeah, you're working, but what do you have for when you have iftar and stuff, and it's not disrupting your actual Ramadan. And you talked about the benefits of running and being able to almost engage in a sort of different sort of form of spirituality whilst you're running.
Yeah.
I mean, so you're completely on the road now.
I'm completely on the road. I have a rest day, a recovery day every 4 or 5 days. That's when I go back and see my family. The hardest bit so far is missing my family. I mean, yeah. I'm 47, been married for 23 years. And, in Ramadan is time of, family getting together, waking up and, doing iftar together, sahri. But that's been my biggest struggle. But alhamdulillah, it's a monumental task. And without the support of my family, my friends, my community, this would have been impossible. But alhamdulillah, credit to, the whole community, supporting and being there.
Well, a credit to your wife and your kids. I know you're not able to break your fast with them, but it's something that Dad's just doing that thing, isn't he? Where he's running.
Yeah. It's their sacrifice as well, and they will get rewarded in abundance. And hopefully, we'll have big parties. After lockdown is over, and and catch up on and make up on that time, inshallah.
Yeah. Now, I know that, so we had Harun Mota earlier on in one of our first episodes. We also had Dabr al-Islam Chowdhury. And it's fantastic coincidence because there's also a connection with you and Dabr and Uncle Dabr as well. So tell us how you sort of, how you know of him and what
Dabr al-Sasa and Sir Tom are actually one of my inspirations, obviously at their age for what they've done. It's amazing, and I'm half their age, if you know what I mean. I'm 47, so for them to do what they're doing is phenomenal, and it's amazing what they're doing, and it's inspirational, and it's engaging communities to come together and do our little bit for the community. So hopefully we on the 27th night when I enter Channel S studio, that's the plan. Dabr al-Sasa will be there to meet me in person. So that I'm being hopeful that's going to be put in place.
Is that on the 27th night?
27th night of Ramadan on Channel S Sky 77. Global Relief Trust have a fundraising campaign that night, and one of the slots will be me running into the studio, and hopefully some key dignitaries and hopefully Dabr al-Sasa will be welcoming me and there, inshallah.
That would be such a phenomenal. I mean, Dabr uncle is so inspirational in that he's 101 years old and he's still fasting and he's still walking his laps, and it really is a testament to how much how much Muslims can do during this real tough time that the world is going through. I wanted to ask you as well. I mean, what inspires you on the road? I mean, whilst you're running, I always think whilst you're running, we can't listen to music whilst we're running. It's a blessed month. It's we can't sort of there are obviously things that you want in Ramadan and increase your spirituality. What do you think about once you're running?
You know what, with my running, the nasheeds you can listen to, obviously, which I do. There's Quran that I catch up on as well, because some days I'll be running for 1.5 to 2 hours. So it's a long time, and sometimes what I do, I mean, when I go out running, I mean, I plan what I'm going to do. So it's me time. So I'm just thinking. Sometimes I will switch everything off and just think about, okay, this is what I've done today. This is what I need to do tomorrow, and then I put the skeleton, the bullet points into my head, and then when I finish my run, I know what I've got ready to do and take forward. But the other inspiration is when I meet people, when I, especially because it's not virtual, and I'm going through villages and towns. amazing people who I've met so far. And it's not just from Muslim community, non-Muslims, subhanAllah. I had this lady in Leicester. We were at some park, and there was a tuk-tuk. We hired that tuk-tuk with us that day. He came along from Oldham, and the people were gathering, and this lady, 80 years old, give and take, came up to me and said, "Are you really running from Oldham to London?" I said, "Yes, I am." She got her purse out and she goes, "You know what? I've only got £2.50, and that was for my coffee or something." And she handed that over to me. I thought, wow, that just took me back. I thought, look, this is not about Muslim, this is not about Christian, this is about humanity. And when I told her about the cause and what Global Relief Trust are doing, that was amazing. The next day, I ran through a village where, through a village where people were sat outside drinking in a pub, and the support vehicle stopped in front of it, so I run past it, and they're probably asking him what's going on. So as soon as I approached them at that junction, these guys got the wallet out, and everybody chipped in about 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 pounds altogether that came in. So I'm getting donations from people on the road, and well-wishers stopping, clapping, waving, and alhamdulillah, that's what keeps you going. Sometimes, yes, it does get lonely, it gets painful, like you said, I'm not a professional runner. I'm not an athlete. I was 16 stone, and for me to do what I'm doing is going beyond my limits. But when I see these kind of gestures and these kind of well wishing coming towards me, and I think, wow, amazing, and that keeps me going. And then when I look at my donation link, the other day somebody donated £12,000, one-off donation.
Oh, wow.
£12,000. I thought, wow. Last year I raised £12,000 doing 200 kilometers, but this year one-off donation, £12,000. I thought, alhamdulillah, and to this date, I don't know who that person is.
Wow. Whoa.
So if that doesn't inspire people and inspire me, I don't know what will.
You've clearly moved people, Afruz, and what you're doing is running 313 kilometers in general. In any sort of 1 month period is a phenomenal task, but doing it whilst fasting, in a sense, people recognize the sacrifice, and it's not about being the loudest person or being it's about you doing your thing, and seeing how you can help humanity and seeing how you can help the world. So you'll be running in Milton Keynes today. How far will you be running today?
Today, because it's a special day, 313 and the 313 Sahabas, I will be doing a half a marathon today, inshallah, 21 kilometers.
21 kilometers.
21 kilometers whilst fasting. That
Wow.
will be the highest. So far, highest I've done is 19 and a half this year in Ramadan. So because of the 313 and because of 17th Ramadan, I'm going to, inshallah, attempt to complete 21 kilometers, a half marathon, inshallah.
Phenomenal. Honestly, I don't know how you do it.
I don't know how I do it. I think it's something from upstairs that comes to me from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Otherwise, even sometimes when we drive back, from Derby, the route that we took and then come back home, we think to, the driver, my friend, the Shahid, sometimes we have other runners with me. Have we really done that route? Some of the elevation, if you're going through, I don't know if you're from Northwest or you're in London, but some of the elevation when you go through places like Hyde and Buxton and the high peaks, 325 meters elevation, right? God. And the last elevation I did in Northampton was 153 meters. So can you see? So that actually has helped me in a way, because I've gone through the difficult part, the struggling part. Now, Leicester, and Northampton and Milton Keynes and London, it's flat as anything. So the average will be about 150, 200. But the elevation that I've had to go through, coming through the high peaks and the peak districts, were like over 300 meters. So alhamdulillah, all that actually, comes together, and with the support and the donations and the donors and the messages we get, it's just blown me over, and it makes me emotional sometimes. But
you know what? Gosh. And honestly, I mean, if you're in Milton Keynes today, please go and see Afruz and give him all the support that you can. I'll be sort of virtually giving you my support here. And if you're watching Channel S on the 27th night, tune in to see Afroz running into the studio. Honestly, it's been such a pleasure speaking to you. Will you be visiting one of the countries that you're supporting? Will you be?
Yes, yes. I've visited already. I've visited Burundi. I've visited Rohingya camps recently after the fire. I was one of the first ones to go and distribute aid there through Global Relief Trust. So once this is over, we will, I will be visiting, other countries where I will distribute, what the funds that we've managed to accumulate. And like I said, the team are going out again on Friday. So if I can just plug my link, if that's okay.
You can.
It's givebright.com/313. So it's here. People can see. Wow. So these are the t-shirts we've got for the runners who join us in different towns. So if you want one of these, they will become antique. We've only made 250 of them. So if you want one, join
everyone.
join me on my route. We're going through Milton Keynes, Luton, St Albans. Then we're going to hit London, Tower Bridge, and then obviously 27th night will be in a Channel S studio, inshallah.
Well, I mean, I hope that someone from the Ramadan radio team, if not myself, can make it to the Channel S.
It'll be amazing, and we'd love to have somebody there to it's going to be a historic kind of moment.
I think so, definitely.
And it'll be my pleasure if somebody from your team is there.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I'm sure there's one way we can organize that, as typing to the team on the WhatsApp. I mean, if we do, we'll essentially be speaking to two of the biggest, most inspirational people that I've had on this show so far, which is, Uncle Dabril and you, Afroz.
Oh, alhamdulillah.
Honestly, I always, have runners on this show, and I talk about how, people can exercise throughout Ramadan and, get involved in, taking care of your health. Because ultimately, if you don't take care of your health, then no one else will.
Exactly.
And you really, what Afroz has done, through running is, take back control of, something that the doctor was saying you need to take medicine for it. Let's just leave it to, having a tablet every day or something. He said he took back control of his health and, decided that his destiny was in his own hands and, of course, in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's hands. But before I leave you today, I just wanted to ask actually what your favorite iftar was. I mean, I know that a lot of it has to do with running and, inspirational that you're running and stuff, but I'm sure there's an element of you thinking about food whilst you're running as well. How do you keep yourself sustained?
Alhamdulillah, food, obviously, I have my recovery drink, which helps me, and traditional like kisuri, I don't know if kisuri and chana bhaji and your what's it called now? It's a Bangladeshi. It's like a rice pudding kind of. It's a soft kind of like a rice pudding, which is good after you've not been eating all day. And obviously, I've been not having as much of the fried stuff, but when I've been invited over, some of the food people I've been putting out has been like 5-star. Alhamdulillah. But you know what? Just quick message is we always say our health is our wealth, and what we say it, but we don't act upon it. And I think people should act upon this. And what the doctor told me is, what, Afruz, okay, you work in a school, you've got this, you've got that. Do you not want to? Okay, life we don't know. Allah knows how long we're going to live. But if you do not want to enjoy your quality time with your children, your grandchildren, if that's what you want, you're working around the clock and doing this and that. And who are you doing it for? Who are you doing it for? You're doing it for your family. But if you're going to be on medication and you're going to have ill health, your family will not enjoy your company for very, very much. So, so that's a message that I think we need to head home and encourage people. What, our health is our wealth, and what, if we make small little steps, if I can do it, and anybody can do it.
Absolutely. I mean, that is a message that we really need to send home to a lot of our members of our community. I know that a lot of my elders are, have completely sort of, ended their lives. I'm old now, that's it. Go get me this and go get me that. And I always, tell them, take back your health. It's the one thing that you actually have control over. Now, Afruz, I'm going to leave you here. And
Thank you very much.
the absolute best of luck for your run today. And if you're in Milton Keynes, go see Afruz. He feeds off of your energy. So give him all the strong energy. And, you know, I'm so immensely proud of everything you're doing. And, you know, I hope the run goes well today, inshallah. But thank you, Afruz, for joining us. We'll post the links for the donations, and we'll post the links for what Afruz is doing on the Facebook chat below. Join in. I mean, if you can run, you know, run with him. If you can take back control of your health, take back control of your health with him. And if you're about in London, then I'm sure there's a way that we can all go and see Afruz as he steps into the Channel S studio. But for now, we'll leave you here, and thank you, Afruz, for joining us.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam. Now, that was a real high for our first guest. I mean, I know that I sort of wanted to get into running during Ramadan. Running outside of Ramadan in itself is quite a challenge for me. I seem to have broken my toe for the past 6 months now, and I'm sure it's not a broken toe. Maybe I just need to go to the doctors. Don't want to go to the doctors. Anyway, let's not talk about that. I'm going to get into another dibble dabble about things that don't actually relate to this show. So one high, someone running 313 kilometers in Ramadan to another high. Let me introduce my next guest, Nimrah Shahid, who is a journalist, currently a journalist, formerly at The Guardian, at Bloomberg and the Bureau of Investigative Journalism. Now, I didn't just bring Nimrah on because she's a journalist, and that's a really cool job to have. I should know myself. But yesterday, Nimrah Shahid and her investigation skills have landed her an award from the prestigious Amnesty International. Let me introduce my guest now. Nimrah, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real privilege to be here.
It's great to have you here, and truly an exceptional day. I mean, Nimrah, if I can introduce Nimrah in a few words. Nimrah and I have been friends for some time now. We went to university together, and I've seen the sort of, rise of her career as she went through journalism. And mashallah, in the very few years that she's been, I think it's actually been 2 years that she's been in journalism, has managed to gain a prestigious award today. I wanted to bring Nimrah on the show today to talk about everything news related, and, you know, what we can do as Muslims to get more involved in the news and the media, and really just to talk through how you came to win an award. You know, to have so few Muslims in the media in itself, you know, it's exceptional that one of the Muslims that we do have has won this prestigious award. Nimrah, so tell us where your journey began in journalism.
Sure. So I feel like I took an almost, I don't know if this is the right word, but like a higgledy-piggledy path into journalism.
Right word, yeah.
Because I feel like when I was doing my undergraduate degree, it was something that like I'd thought about and I'd done kind of work experience in, but I kind of didn't like fully understand like the industry and how it works, or even kind of how to get my foot in the door. I didn't really know anybody who worked in journalism. And so for me, I had it as this, you know, this thing I wanted to do, but yeah, I just didn't understand it as a kind of industry. But I thought, you know, I'm going to carry on trying out kind of different career paths, because ultimately for me, the reason I wanted to go into this profession in the first instance was because I wanted to make a meaningful impact, whether that's through the kind of stories that I tell, or even like, you know, for the communities that I'm telling those stories for, and you know, being there as a Muslim in journalism, working in this profession. And then I went away and I spent some time working in policy, and I spent some time like I did an internship in the civil service, and I applied for teaching roles, and I knew that public service in general is something that is very important to me, and serving society in general through what I do. And I like that was sort of my first office experience, and from there I realized, you know, how challenging it is just in general as a Muslim navigating kind of the professional workplace really, and sort of breaking into these spaces. And I realized kind of the difficulties that people of color face, and I wanted to kind of do something about it since then. And then again, I kept trying again, applying for different things, and it wasn't working out for me. So I went abroad for a year. I decided to go abroad, and I wanted to spend some time traveling and seeing the world. And I realized kind of unknowingly, just through meeting different people, listening to their personal stories, like I really love that. Like I love listening to people's stories and hearing about their lives and what things matter to them. And I remember it was by almost like coincidence or qadar, depending on what you want to call it, when I was in Spain at the time, and Shaheen, you dropped me a message out of the blue and said, I'm coming to Spain, I'm coming on holiday, do you have any recommendations? And I thought, that's really funny, because the place she's coming to is where I am. And you came, and I remember you had just started off your career at Channel 4 News. I remember listening to how excited you got, sort of talking about what you were doing, and how it enriched your life every day to kind of hear about what was going on in the world, and then to share that with other people and to inform them and do that act of public service. And that sort of exhilaration that you felt from sort of like covering so many different things, and having, you know, it being different every day. And I thought, you know what, I'd love to do that. And I realized I'd spent a long time trying to kind of just go into or apply for jobs for the sake of like security, but I realized life is too short to do something that you don't enjoy. So I came back, and I saw there was an advert going for a scholarship from the Aziz Foundation. And for anybody who doesn't know, the Aziz Foundation is a charity which currently works to increase access to postgraduate education for Muslims in journalism, policy, and law. And I saw they were advertising 2 scholarships to go to City University and complete journalism training. So I just applied to this. I didn't think anything of it at the time. I was just applying to lots of different things. And then completely like to my surprise, I went through the interview process, and they offered me a scholarship to go and do my journalism training. And that was kind of like my first foot into the door, to kind of start understanding how the industry worked, and to start meeting really key people who would have an influence in my career. And as part of that, I was learning about things like data journalism and reporting. And then I think my career really kicked off when I saw, you know, what was happening in Pakistan during the start of the pandemic. And I saw that there were lots of British people, British Pakistanis, British Indian people who were stranded out abroad in Pakistan and India. And they weren't having, you know, flights sent for them in the same way that people in Peru were. And I thought, you know what, I really want to do something about this. I want to do something that is genuinely going to make a difference. And so that was when I thought, okay, I need to start pitching stories. And I would literally call up different news desks at like 8, 9 o'clock in the morning before they had their main meeting. And I would say, I want to write the story. Can you tell me who I need to go to for this to be commissioned and for me to report on this story? So they'd give me a contact, I'd email them. And then just from there, I started writing, and I'd write one thing and then it would do really well on their website. And then I would keep going back to them and saying, you know what, I have another idea. I want to do a follow-up. I want to write another story. And doing that after a period of time, that helped me to establish my relationship with that newsroom and kind of like build up my portfolio and a name for myself. And that in turn then opened other doors for me. And that opened doors for me to go and work at the Bureau of Investigative Journalism for a while and really build up my skills in data journalism, and then also go on to Bloomberg as well and learn about financial journalism, which a lot of people might not think about as being like the forefront of their lives, but actually it's very important because finance basically underlies so many things in the world. And going back to the investigation, while I was at the Guardian, a lot of things started to come to the surface from when I was back in the civil service. Some of the experiences of people who are Black and people who are Asian who weren't being treated well in the workplace had started to come to light. And this was around the time of the Black Lives Matter movement and because of COVID. And again, I had this thought where I was like, I need to do something about this. And this was when I went to the Guardian and I pitched the story, and I had gone to them a number of times with similar stories, and I got a lot of rejections. And I think that's one thing worth knowing about journalism, is that it's very common to get rejections, whether it's in jobs, whether it's stories. It's part and parcel of the job, but you have to keep going and you have to keep working through it. And I approached them about this, and they helped me put a team together and go about proving and verifying the facts to deliver a full investigation showing exactly what was going on inside the Cabinet Office and how people were being treated there, and how, you know, somebody had been hired without going through the normal job recruitment process that you would expect to go through when you'd apply for a job, and had basically been hired because, you know, a big political figure, Dominic Cummings, had said, I want to hire you via a blog. And
he wanted to hire weirdo specifically, didn't he? He put that in his blog.
Yeah, so he specifically wanted to hire weirdos and misfits.
So actually, before we continue, if I could just tell the audience, Dominic Cummings was a former advisor to the Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Quite a lot of controversy right now in the sort of rift that we're having between Boris Johnson and Dominic Cummings, in that they're really split. But Dominic Cummings was the sort of mastermind behind the Vote Leave campaign. And as a result of Prime Minister, you know, becoming the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson taking office, Dominic Cummings was almost, you know, sent in because as being the mastermind, you know, he would be at the forefront of advising the Prime Minister during what was the biggest thing on the agenda back then, which was Brexit. And, you know, he had a real sort of way of doing things. I know that at Channel 4 News, there was a huge rush to not have any ministers on the show, or, you know, not have any real official spokespeople from the government on the show, because, you know, we had I don't know, we must have had an agenda or something that they speak of. But I know that, you know, that there were quite a few things that the Vote Leave campaign did have an effect in government, and in a sense, and the rift that's coming out between the PM and Dominic Cummings now has almost shown itself in the drip feeding of material that we're seeing from his former advisor. And when he wanted to hire those weirdos, we did almost think, you know, what's going on here? This isn't, you know, this can't be one of the official job applications that we see on the civil service website. But I know that, Nimrah, you had you'd got quite a big scoop when it came to the one of the people who was hired.
Yeah, so basically, I got this tip that someone, you know, had been hired, but it was like, how do we kind of prove that this is sort of true? And, you know, where did he come from as well? And through our research, we uncovered that he had basically been hired through this blog, which had called for weirdos and misfits. So back in January of last year, when Dominic Cummings first posted this blog saying, "We're calling for weirdos and misfits," this hire, approached Dominic Cummings, and we found out that he was then interviewed in 10 Downing Street, or at least, well, he was supposed to be interviewed in 10 Downing Street, but then that didn't end up happening. And he then went on to work in Cabinet Office as a contractor. And while he was working there, he started to raise a few red flags, kind of on the internal communication forum. So someone had posted an article saying that, Black people were 15 times less likely to be hired than white people in the civil service. And there was a bit of this hire, he had started to cause a bit of a stir with some of the comments he was making on there. And that was when people started to look into his social media. And that was when they found his Twitter account and found that he had commented on a video where he had called, he had said, "Time to get out the live rounds," on a video where there were lots of Black people basically running.
Wow, I mean, even to sort of hear something like that and to think, the journey of trying to prove that, what was that like? I mean, was it a long journey? I know investigations in itself, I mean, the story in itself is shocking, and we can all hear really shocking stories, but how did you go about proving it?
So in terms of the process of proving it, although it might not look like it when you, on the surface of the report, when you read it, it actually involved a lot of something called data journalism, and using something called open source intelligence techniques. So this is where you can kind of use the internet to do like very advanced searches and using specific sort of technology that's available in newsrooms to really sort of dig into information in terms of what's out there on the internet, but also with data journalism, basically extracting that information and data and kind of analyzing it to sort of understand, this person's character and like what they're about. And it's become an increasingly kind of innovative tool that's being used a lot in journalism now. And I think it's a very exciting and growing area. And I think there is also a need in that specific space, for more diversity in data journalism as well, because we see how, from COVID, we saw how lots of people from Asian and Black backgrounds were affected by COVID. And it was only when we started to get data that we started to get a full picture kind of what that looked like. And I felt like this really painted the need for why we need people with different perspectives to kind of pore over data and to understand like the benefits and the drawbacks of data as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I know that, a lot of people like to think that viewers and, that readers are always strayed and, always, motivated by people's opinions and columns. But it is the data that's the true driving force between stories that change the world. And people do want data. They want real stories. They want stories that have real evidence that back up, really strong lines, like the one that you had as well. Now you mentioned that you were one of the few, and myself as well, one of the few sort of, diverse people that are in the newsrooms that are, based in, in the news in itself. What is that like? And, I like to think that, we bring something special to the forefront, because we have our backgrounds, because we have, our careers have been set in these multi-generational, very diverse places that we've grown up. what is it like when it comes to the news? Were you interested in Pakistan because you're Pakistani? Was there a humanitarian story there? Where does faith come into that? Like 5 questions in one go, Nimrah.
I think for me, it was a mixture of all of those things, really. I was interested in Pakistan as a product of that. I wanted to make a difference to some of, what was happening to the people there. But I think that also kind of goes back to my kind of faith as well, and what Islam teaches us about, when you see people who are in difficulty or facing hardship, doing what you can in your capacity to help others and to lift them out of difficulty. But I also think from like an Islamic faith perspective, being in the newsroom, and sometimes when things are very fast paced and moving very quickly, and when you're consuming the news cycle on a daily basis, I find it's really important to go back and remind myself of why it is that I wanted to do what I do in the first place, which is, foremost for God, and for, creating some impact. And by that is not necessarily about kind of getting your name out there or doing things in that sense, but doing what you can to make a bit of, the small bit of difference you can to make the world a slightly better place, by raising awareness of, different issues or things that people might not know about, or maybe aren't really being talked about. But also from a faith perspective as well, we have a crisis at the moment in news with misinformation and disinformation, and a lot of people don't necessarily feel connected or feel a sense of trust in the news, and then this is where we can end up with situations where people are being fed information that could not even information, but false information that could potentially be very dangerous. And I think journalism has a really important role to play in informing people of the truth and the facts, so they can make their own informed personal decisions.
Yeah, well, I mean, I always like to think that journalism and Islam almost go hand in hand, in that in you want to tell the truth and you want the story to go out there, but you want people to take control of their lives, and you want people to be more understanding and knowledgeable of things that are going on in their world, so they feel empowered to make a change and to really fight for justice. I mean, Nimrah, I also want to commend you on the absolute humility that you do show, in that we are Muslims, we are in journalism, and there is, of course, an element of vanity involved in journalism, and to have at the forefront of that Islamic principles like amana, like to have explaining and understanding people's stories, but having a real passion for justice at the forefront of that as well, I think is really commendable. And I know myself as well, being in journalism, it's about telling people's stories, and it's about having a real understanding of what injustice are people facing, and how can I bring that to the forefront, and how can I really make a big change through that, because it's about you serving the world, and about you thinking through my career, through public service, at a public service broadcaster or public service, newspaper, how can I make a real positive impact to this world? And journalism is one of the best ways to do that. Now I'm sort of running on the clock here. I've got messages coming in about 3 minutes and 5 minutes. Before I leave, actually, before we end the show, Nimrah, I do want to ask you as well, how are your fasts going, and what are you having for iftar in 30 seconds?
My fasts are going brilliantly, and I'm going to have a chicken burger tonight to treat myself for that award.
Wonderful. I mean, I hope the chicken burger is probably, Nimrah described to me one of the best piece of fried chicken that she had was in Malta. But Nimrah, I do hope we can have you back on the show for a longer time, inshallah. And thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to post Nimrah's article at the bottom of the Facebook chat if you guys want to see and read all the amazing work that she's doing and follow her on journalism. There are lots of ways that our faith and journalism crosses over, and as our journalism and or faith in any sort of career crosses over in a sense. Right, the clock is running anyway, but I do want to thank everyone and say Jazakallahu khair, and thank you for listening to me, Shaheen Satter, on Ramadan Radio 87.9 FM. Till next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Nimrah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.